It's a Tuesday afternoon, you're mid-task, maybe halfway through a sandwich, and your manager sends you a one-line email. 4 words. Can we talk later? And something in your chest does that thing. That drop. That small, silent alarm that goes off before you've even consciously read the words. And for the next 3 hours, you are somewhere else. You're in every meeting from the last 2 weeks. You're rereading Slack messages. You're rehearsing apologies for things you're not even sure you did. By the time the actual conversation happens, and it turns out your manager just wanted to reschedule something, you have already been fired 5 times in your own head. Here's what I want to talk about today. There's a voice in your head that runs that spiral, and most of us have spent our entire adult lives assuming that voice is us. That it's our intelligence, our caution, our edge. But there's another voice underneath it, quieter, steadier, and much less interested in your performance, that actually knows who you are. And most of the exhaustion you carry, the low-grade anxiety, the defensiveness, the constant self-monitoring, comes from listening to the wrong one. The version of you that gets anxious and competitive and defensive isn't the real you. It's a construction, and once you see that clearly, something in you can finally put the weight down. Here's an image I want you to hold on to. Imagine you built a house yourself a long time ago, when you were young and scared and didn't have much to work with. You built it fast, out of whatever was around. Some of it was other people's opinions. Some of it was things that happened to you that you had to make sense of. Some of it was rules you invented so you'd know how to be safe. And you've been living in that house ever since. But the walls are thin. Every storm rattles it. Every unexpected email, every ambiguous facial expression from a coworker, every silence from someone you love, the wind comes right through. And you spend enormous energy patching the gaps. You rehearse conversations. You over-explain. You perform. You brace. You keep the doors bolted against threats that mostly aren't coming. That house is what we're going to call the ego. Not in the pop psychology sense of arrogance. In a much more precise sense, it's the self you built to survive. And it runs on fear because fear was the material available. And here's the thing nobody told you, there's another house. One you didn't build. One that was already there, waiting, before you ever picked up a hammer. And the reason you've never really rested is because you've been guarding the wrong one. Let's go back to the email. 3 hours of spiraling. Let's actually count the cost. 3 hours of cortisol. 3 hours where you couldn't focus on your actual work. So now you're behind, which will generate its own next spiral. 3 hours where you weren't present for your kid asking you a question, or your partner telling you about their day, or the coffee you were drinking. 3 hours of your one life spent defending yourself against a threat that did not exist. And if you zoom out, if you take an honest look at the last 10 years, how many hours have gone into that? Preparing for conversations that went fine. Worrying about people who weren't thinking about you. Managing an image of yourself that you're not even sure you like. Trying to prove something to someone who wasn't asking for proof. This is the math the ego doesn't want you to do. Because if you do it, you start to notice something strange. All that defending, what exactly were you defending? A reputation, a self-concept. A version of yourself you're afraid people will see through. And the harder question underneath, was that thing ever really you to begin with? Or was it just the shape of the house you built when you were too young to know you had another option? Here is where it starts to turn. And I want to say this gently, because it's the kind of thing that sounds too simple until it lands, and then it changes everything. Your worth was never something you had to build. It was never something you had to earn, prove, defend, or repair. It was there before you started performing. It's there right now, underneath the performing, and it will be there when you stop. Read that again slowly, because your ego is probably already objecting. It's saying, sure, but I still have to be competent. I still have to be liked. I still have to be safe. And notice, that's the drafty house talking. That's the voice that has a vested interest in keeping you patching walls. Because if you ever really believed that your worth was already established, you wouldn't need it anymore. And it knows that. The voice that's always bracing, always scanning, always calculating how you're being perceived, that's not protecting you. It's protecting itself. It has convinced you that its anxiety is your intelligence, that its vigilance is your competence, that without it, you'd fall apart. But look at your life. Look at the moments you've actually felt most alive, most yourself, most useful to the people around you. That voice was quiet then. It wasn't running the show. Something else was. So let's go back to that Tuesday email one more time. Can we talk later? Your stomach drops. 3 hours of spiraling begin. But now, with what we've just said, what was actually happening in those 3 hours? It wasn't really about the email. It wasn't really about your manager. It wasn't even really about your job. The email was just wind on the thin walls. What was actually happening is that a part of you, a very old part, was doing what it has always done. Bracing to defend a version of yourself it's terrified to lose. A version that was constructed, not created. A version that has to keep proving it deserves to exist. That's the whole game. That's what most anxiety actually is. When you look under the hood. Not danger management. Self-defense of a self that was never really you. And the moment you see that clearly, even for a second, something loosens. Because you realize you don't have to win the spiral. You don't have to argue with the anxious voice or shut it up or fix it. You just have to notice, oh, that's the drafty house talking. That's not me. I don't actually live there anymore. Here's what surprises people when this reframe starts to land in daily life. You'd think that if you stopped listening to the anxious voice, you'd become passive, lazy, careless. That's what the ego threatens will happen. But the opposite is true. When you stop pouring energy into defending the construction, you finally have energy for your actual life. You notice your coffee. You hear what your partner is actually saying, not what you're afraid they're saying. You do your work from a steadier place. The email comes in and your stomach doesn't drop. Or if it does, you notice the drop and you don't have to move into the house with it. You can just let it pass through. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about no longer being at war with the person you already are. The quiet that shows up, it's not the quiet of everything being fixed. Your problems are still there. Your inbox is still full, but you're no longer confusing yourself with the anxious commentary about all of it. And that gap, that small daily gap between the trigger and the meaning you give it, is where your whole life actually lives. You don't have to tear the drafty house down. You just have to stop insisting on it. The other one is already there. It always was. In a moment, we're going to sit inside it together for a few minutes and see what it actually feels like. If you're finding value here, you're welcome to like the video and subscribe. And now, let's shift into a quiet guided meditation together. Let's take a few minutes together. You don't have to do anything. Just let your body settle into whatever it's sitting on. Feel the weight of yourself being held. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw soften. Let your breath be as it is, not deeper, not slower. Just noticed. See if you can feel the small effort you're always making, the subtle bracing, the quiet preparation for something. Just notice it. You don't have to fix it. And now, gently, imagine you're allowed to stop, just for these few minutes. No email is coming. No conversation needs rehearsing. There is nothing here to defend. Breathe in. Breathe out. The voice that spirals, let it be there in the background if it wants to. You don't have to argue with it. You don't have to silence it. You're just not living in that room right now. Feel underneath the thinking. Feel underneath the planning. There's something quieter here. It doesn't ask anything of you. It doesn't need you to prove anything. This is the other house. The one that was already built. You're inside it now. You've always been able to come here. Breathe in. Breathe out. Notice your hands. Notice your feet. Notice how the room sounds. You're still here. You didn't have to earn this moment. It was given. Let yourself rest inside a version of you that isn't performing, that isn't scanning, that isn't preparing for the worst. Just you, just now. If a thought comes, let it come. If a feeling rises, let it rise. Nothing you feel right now is a problem. Stay here a moment longer, and when you're ready, not before, let your attention drift gently back into the room. Feel your body. Feel the chair. Feel the air on your skin. You can carry this with you. Not as an idea, as a place you now know how to return to. We're glad you practiced with us today. If it's helpful, a free digital copy of A Course in Miracles is available via the link in the description. You're also welcome to leave a short comment like, "I am grateful. Thank you for spending this time here." If something loosened, even a little, trust that. You don't have to make it into anything. Be gentle with yourself as you move back into your day. The anxious voice will show up again, and now you know it isn't you. That's enough for today. Take care of yourself.